Good evening, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle-earth to another episode of Disguised Coverage, part of the Cover One Sports Network, the only podcast in existence that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin. I am your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores, A-N-T. Give me a follow on the old Twitter. Follow on the old TikTok as well. Same exact handle, pro, 2 underscores, A-N-T. In tonight's special Tuesday episode of Disguised Coverage. A lot happened in this week for myself personally. To give you guys a little peek behind the curtain, myself and my guest tonight, Kendall Mirsky, are going to dive into the specific game-deciding matchups for Bills versus Rams, what you need to know from a schematic and structural standpoint, the X's and O's, the hows and whys, not just like, oh, the secondary versus the receivers, and here's some stats and numbers. No, we're going to talk about what we've seen on the tape paired together with metrics, talking about actual football and what happens on the field, and we're going to be bringing that all together for you tonight. But a little peek into my world. I live in Buffalo, have relocated here after being in New York City for almost 10 years. AEW's in town tomorrow. I wanted to go to that. So the Going Deep guys, Mike and Kevin, were kind enough to switch time slots so that they would go tomorrow at 7 and I would be able to go tonight at 7, which is fantastic. And then I had a really great guest lined up for tonight. But unfortunately, life happens. My guest had to bail, so I had to pivot. And when I couldn't have that guest, I reached out instead to the best possible replacement for that guest. And when that person was also unavailable, I then called Kendall, and here we are. So, Kendall, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. You are, and also, I'm pulling double duty tonight. We have the film room live after this. Kendall won't be on the film room because he's slammed with life stuff. He was kind enough to literally work this into his schedule. So, all jokes aside, thank you very much. Major kudos to you, Kendall, for joining me tonight, and for a pretty sweet episode. This could be a monumental season for the Buffalo Bills in franchise history, in the history of this city, and we get to kick it off. You were kicking this season of Disguised Coverage off and the season of the Buffalo Bills off. I'm very excited to have you here on such a potentially momentous episode.
Yeah, it's quite the honor. Hopefully I can contribute at least a fraction of what those other guests could have contributed to the show. I chalk that up as a W if I can get 1/5 of what that guest would have brought. So yeah, I'm
you are fantastic. All jokes aside, you are fantastic, and I would
for a loop there.
It was a good one, right? I thought of that before we went live, and I was like, he's never going to see this coming. As I was saying it, I was watching your face to wait till it clicked. I'm really proud of it.
It was good. It was really good. I'm really excited though. Really excited for this. 2 days away. We are so close to NFL football. I just remember all those years where you're watching that first Thursday game and it's always the Patriots and the Steelers and all of these highly touted AFC teams, and now we're that team. So very exciting.
And it's crazy. It's nuts to think because also too, to build on that point, usually you get there's some sort of rivalry. Kendall just shows up. Sorry, David's right. I'll take a step back.
I love it though.
Usually you get when you have the opener and it's the Super Bowl champion. Usually it's some sort of significant game, usually in conference, whether it's a division opponent or this team usually has great games against it. When it was when the Chiefs won the Super Bowl and they opened up on Thursday night against the Houston Texans to kind of run back that divisional matchup that they had from the year
It's
before.
Usually running back something in the playoffs.
Yes, when the Ravens won the Super Bowl and they had to play away because the Orioles wouldn't change their games. They played the Broncos because they played in the playoffs that year with that crazy overtime game. And with the Rams, this is what's just this isn't from an X's and O's perspective or anything that we're going to talk about on the show really, but it's just you have the Rams. They went to the NFC Championship against the San Francisco 49ers, who are a very good football team, a rivalry game in the same division. New young QB and Trey Lance. They've got terrific defensive players and stars in Warner and Bosa. They got Deebo Samuel and Kittle. Kyle Shanahan's a great coach. It would have been so easy for the NFL just to be Niners, Rams, boom, that's it. Or literally any other kind of matchup that you wanted to within the NFC, given the Rams schedule. There's tons of potential. There is no reason for them to go interconference or cross-conference with Bills Rams, except for the fact that the Bills are a hot ticket team and item. And exactly to your point, like for years, it was always just like, okay, like these two really good teams. And then the Bills open up on Sunday at 1 against Mark Sanchez and the Jets, and they're going to lose 41-10 or whatever. And it's just, here we go again. Like,
sounds
just
like my
what
childhood.
It's all of our childhoods and a lot of people's adulthoods as well. It's just, it's wild still to me that we're in this position after years and years, and not to wax poetically, but like just after years and years of being like, is this coach going to work out? Is this GM going to work out? Is this first round pick going to hit? Is this quarterback the guy? Is this offensive line going to stay intact? Is this defensive? So many questions that have seemingly been answered. And now the Bills are Super Bowl favorites. Oh, and this is even crazier too. Granted, the Rams lost some significant players from last year's team, but they're the Super Bowl champions, defending, reigning Super Bowl champions in their house. The Bills are favored on the road against the defending Super Bowl champions on opening night. Just where the Bills have come in a short 5 years since Sean McDermott took over this team in 2017 that brought Brandon Beane aboard. It's still just like when you sit back and kind of like remove yourself from a minute, like it's just, I had somebody the other day, I was saying how excited I was about the upcoming season, and it was one of my boys who's not a Bills fan, and he was like, well, yeah, easy for you to say, you're a Bills fan. And I was just like, I've never heard anybody say that to me seriously in life. Like the fact that people are like jealous that I'm a Bills fan, just
I had that happen to me the other day too. I was talking to someone at work, and they were just like, yeah, what's your favorite team? And I was like, the Bills. And they were just like, oh man, good luck to you this year. You guys are looking real good, Super Bowl favorites. And I'm just like, hearing it out loud from someone else, like outside of the mafia, it's wild. It is really like brings perspective to it, and it makes you rethink and kind of like reminisce on all of those years in the past.
I spent 9 years in New York City just having to hear it from Giants fans and Jets fans, and then like I moved in December of 2020, right as like they were kind of like completing that rise up. And I'm just like, man, I wish I could be back there to just like not have to be, instead of being like, ha, you're a Bills fan. Now it's like,
I wish I was still at college at UMass while this was happening. I remember when my friends laughed in my face when we drafted Josh Allen.
I remember all those texts. Yeah. You guys got the wrong Josh, and don't you wish you had Darnold? What a turnaround we have had. Also, I wanted to pull this up again. Sophia, thank you very much for your super chat and for being here. She also gives you some support. She says, 3 cheers for Kendall. Hip, hip, hooray. So there you go.
Also, I was knocked down real early.
You got knocked down hard. And William came, this is William's second comment. He said, just kidding, I love you both. But his initial comment was Kendall over Ant. So you got some support in the chat. We'll give it.
I don't think he was kidding. I think he meant it.
I don't think he did. I think there's a clear, you know what? I feel bad.
I think he's a liar.
So I'm just gonna reel it in. I'm gonna reel it in. Also, I wanted to thank everyone again, as I mentioned in the intro, special Tuesday episode of Disguise Coverage, not the normal night. So I appreciate everybody following on the old Twitter or paying attention on the YouTube, whatever information highway that you ride. Thank you for joining us live on tonight's episode. And we're going to dive right into it because I'm very, very excited for tonight's topic because there is a lot to break down with these two teams. And what's also really fun, and we're going to get to it as we go through the matchups and what we're going to do for these matchups as well, I should say. I have 2 things I'll say. We didn't give ourselves a limit. It could be as macro or as granular as possible. It could be Rams defense versus Bills offense, or it could be like Jalen Ramsey versus Stephon Diggs, or I could stop talking right now because we got a super chat and I got to stop. And Adam comes through and just says, I keep trying to send in a super chat. 3rd try, go Bills. That's awesome.
3rd time's a charm. Everyone knows
I also kind of matched a little bit, almost not full teal, but I kind of matched the $5 super chat tonight,
that is
kind of
close.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't plan it, but I kind of wish I did now. Now I'm going to be obsessed with finding clothing that matches every super chat color. But Adam, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the super chat. Go Bills as well. Ooh, good comment here from Y. I wonder who the inactives will be. I think Zach Moss is going to dress, which would be fantastic. Steven comes in. What's up, Steven? Appreciate you. And then John called out Steven for being late. The chat is cannibalizing themselves. But in tonight's episode, again, we did not limit ourselves in terms of how granular or, how large of a net we would cast, how micro or macro. in terms of what we're going to be going over and covering tonight. As always, in tonight's show, as we give our matchups, those of you joining us live, we want to know your thoughts. What do you think of this matchup? Are you not concerned about it? Are you concerned about it? Do you have another matchup that you are focused on? We want to hear anything and everything you have in the super chat. As always, super chats will get priority. One, because we respect the monetary donation. Two, the color, as I've already mentioned several times, attracts our eyes, and we call it up and we bring it up right away. Super chats get automatic priority. We stop everything we're doing and we bring up those super chats right away. But yeah, let us know, what matchups are you focused on? Again, as granular or as big picture as possible. It could be the Rams secondary versus the Bills receivers, or it could be specifically Jalen Ramsey versus Stephon Diggs, or specifically, Rams running cover 2. What happens in this? And that's the kind of perspective I think we took tonight, a micro and macro approach in detailing some things. And within that, what's super exciting about this, Steve coming through and saying Bills run defense versus the Rams running game, that's going to be part of what we're going to talk about tonight. What's really interesting with these two teams is, and I tweeted this earlier today, the whole styles make fights type of thing. There is just the way these two teams are built. Even if we'll take the Rams defense, for example. The Rams defense, when Brandon Staley was their defensive coordinator a couple years ago, the Rams defense is at the forefront of this too high, keep everything in front of you, light box, tight front, odd front kind of movement designed to stop offenses exactly like the Buffalo Bills. The way teams started playing the Buffalo Bills, they weren't completely using the Rams blueprint, but a lot of those pieces they were taking and applying to their defenses in order to slow down the Buffalo Bills. Like the way the Rams defense was built, it was built to stop offenses like the Buffalo Bills. And that's just one example of all the stylistic fits that really come through in this game and just the excitement that it really brings. And we're going to start. Ken, I want to let you lead off. We're going to start on the defensive side of the ball. And this one, we went a little more granular in terms of focusing on one of the men in the graphic for tonight's episode, which I don't think you can really blame us. And in my opinion, I think Aaron Donald is still the best player in the NFL. I think he's genuinely one of the greatest NFL players of all time. I know some people have some concerns about him smacking people with helmets and being quite violent. But that's beside the point right now. On the field, besides being kind of crazy, he's a phenomenal player in a variety of ways. And our first topic in tonight's episode of these game-deciding matchups is Aaron Donald versus specifically that Bills interior offensive line. We've got Mitch Morse, which we know what to expect or should know what to expect from him. He's a phenomenal center, one of the best movement centers in the NFL. Ryan Bates, trending upward since last year. The Bills' offensive line looked better once he was inserted into the offensive line last year towards the end of the year, changed their running scheme. He moves from left guard to right guard. He'll be starting at right guard this upcoming Thursday. But you can still have some trepidation if you want. The sample size isn't huge, especially with him at right guard. Then you've got Roger Saffold at left guard, a mauler in the run game, big, powerful, but some questions about his potential pass protection capabilities with his footwork and how he moves in space in the pass game, which is weird because he moves so well in space in the run game when he's going forward. It's crazy. They are going to see a lot of work against arguably the best player in the NFL, and Aaron Donald, someone who still right now has the capability to just take over a game at any given moment, given how good he is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, thinking about him versus the interior kind of brings me back to the week 1 loss versus the Steelers last year. Because you think about that game, and a lot of the loss, a lot of it was influenced from Cam Hayward and how much disruption Cam Hayward had against the Bills interior last year. So obviously,
Huge.
Donald is better than Cam Hayward. Like you just said, Donald is arguably
which is
the best
also
player in football.
like real quick. That's also really saying something because Cam Hayward is fantastic. Like Cam Hayward is great, and the fact that we're so easily able to be like, oh no, Aaron Donald's way better. That's how good Donald is because Hayward is a stud.
Exactly. So that's like just to compare that and juxtapose that to last year's week 1 versus this year's week 1. Kind of similar, but obviously we have a different group up front. So I'm curious to see how it's all going to play out. But obviously the question here is, how do the Bills decide to mitigate Donald's impact? And I think that really all stems from the protection packages and how they plan to compensate and account for him. So depending on where he lines up, we could get a lot of answers about Roger Saffold. Like we just said, there are still questions about him in pass pro. I think all of us are really comfortable with him as a run blocker, but you still want to see him in those, not necessarily one-on-one situations, because hopefully no one's one-on-one with Aaron Donald this game. But we hope to get some questions in that regard. And then equally, we could learn a thing or two about Ryan Bates' sustainability factor and staying power in this roster. But I mean, obviously measuring your O-line play to literally the best player in the league, it can be a little bit harsh, but it also helps with that objective evaluation. Cause you know what that top tier, that maybe the floor, cause when you're playing someone that great, you learn about what the floor of your player is.
That's a really good point. We're going to find out about the interior of this Bills offensive line right away because they're going up against the best.
Exactly. But with all of that being said, I am a little bit concerned about overcompensation in the game plan for Aaron Donald, because this specific scenario keeps running through my head. The idea of him lining up on the left side of the offensive line, we shift left or slide left protection type of thing, and there's multiple people going in that direction. And it leaves you with Leonard Floyd versus Spencer Brown one-on-one on the right side. Yeah. And in all honesty, that does scare me a little bit. Obviously, I liked what Spencer Brown did in spurts last year, but a lot of that came in the run game. And a lot more of my concerns came in the pass game. So,
and those spurts were like those spurts came in both ways. Like he would spurt and go up and you were like, fantastic. And then he would drop down. Like he was just pure roller coaster, like extremely high highs and very low lows.
So, I mean, arguably the best player in the NFL when he's not dual wielding helmets. I think
which is badass. I know it's crazy dangerous and not safe, and I'm not trying to make it sound cool, but like that's like Lara Croft with like her dual pistols. Like it's pretty sweet.
But I am really interested to see two things are the main focus. Like I said, one, what is the game plan to mitigate for him? And how much compensation is there for him? Because I don't want to see it on the low end or the high end. Obviously, that middle ground is really tough to find. But also getting answers for guys like Roger Saffold and Ryan Bates, because I think we are going to learn a lot about them in this game.
That's very fair. And that's actually a point like I honestly hadn't considered, which is why, you're fantastic and you're super smart. And I'm glad that, all the people I reached out ahead of you weren't able to show up, and why you were able to pick up the slack. So appreciate you. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I appreciate you. Yeah, that's a good point. Like we want to know what we have in the interior for the Bills offensive line, because it was a position grouping that, no disrespect, because they are NFL players and they're still quite good, they held this offense as a whole back last year, especially in the first half of the year. There was just inconsistent play from Feliciano and Cody Ford and Ike Bodker, and it just wasn't there. And it'll be nice. It's kind of like a baptism by fire. Like you want to know what's up. Okay, throw your guys in against the best player in the NFL, arguably, and one of the best of all time. And I feel like people know how good Aaron Donald is, but I wanted to just read some numbers because it's just ridiculous.
It is.
So he was first in pass rush win rate as a defensive tackle last year at 26%. Second was Chris Jones for the Chiefs at 21%. So 1 out of every 4 times Aaron Donald was beating his block within 2.5 seconds. That's ridiculous. What's also crazy is he saw double teams on roughly 60% of his pass rush snaps. So he was double teamed 6 out of every 10. Okay. Man, that's a lot. His numbers are probably down. False. He was second in the NFL in pressures in 2021 in the regular season with 86. And then he was tied for 6th in sacks with 15. Just the burst that he has, the power, the technique, the hand usage, the explosion throughout his entire body. There is, I guess if you wanted to knock him, it's when he takes himself out of position in the run game, when he tries to penetrate too far or get too far upfield, almost kind of similar to Ed Oliver at times. They just shoot out of their stance and then ironically open up a hole where the play was going. And it's oh, cool. Have fun getting upfield. We're running right to where you were. He'll take himself out of the play from time to time. But you saw it in the Super Bowl. He took over, him and Von Miller really in that second half. But he ices the game. I am very interested to see what we get from the interior of the Bills offensive line in this game. The guard play again in 2021 at best was inconsistent. And I think they've upgraded at both spots. I think you have a known quantity in Roger Saffold, especially in the run game. It's a huge boost in the run game. And I think it potentially could be even, if not maybe a little better, in pass protection than what the Bills had at left guard last year because of Saffold's awareness and his. We keep hearing all the positives about the chemistry and the communication between him and Mitch Morse, which is huge. I think that's also a big piece as well. More consistent guard play will help elevate Mitch Morse. I feel like people don't realize how hard it is to be a good center. Being a center is hard in general. I think it's the hardest position after being a left tackle. Mentally, it's so taxing. Physically as well with what you're asked to do, let alone when you have either inexperience or inconsistency at both guards, let alone both inconsistency and inexperience at those guard positions. Mitch Morse is somebody who I don't think we've really been able to see become unlocked over these last couple of years because of the inconsistency the Bills have had at both guard positions.
Right.
And then again, we want to know what the Bills have. And Aaron Donald, again, in my humble opinion, best player in football, the burst, the quickness, both of those things, especially for anyone, not just for a defensive lineman or defensive tackle, but especially for that position, the likes of which we have rarely, if ever, seen in NFL history, especially on the interior. And then he's got the power and the strength and the technique to match the quickness and the burst, somebody who can take over a game in the blink of an eye in an instant. And if you look at the rest of that defensive line, Von Miller is gone, obviously, which is a big loss for the Rams. I think another big potential loss, Sebastian Joseph Day, somebody who was very integral in the Rams running those bare fronts and those tight front looks with how he occupied on the defensive line. I don't think he's a sexy name. I don't think he's somebody that everyone's pointing to when it comes to talking about the Rams, but he did a lot of the dirty work that freed up. Because here's what it is for, and we're going to get into it in a minute, but that Rams defensive line in the front, what they are doing in this defense, they are trying to just mug gaps and delay and stretch runs to the outside to allow second and third level defenders to funnel and come up and make those plays. They're just trying to slow down and mitigate any potential gain and letting the rest of the defenders rally and tackle. Sebastian Joseph Day was very good in that regard. He left to go to the other team in Los Angeles with the Chargers to play for Brandon Staley, his defensive coordinator, a couple years ago. And man, like that's a huge piece gone for that defense. You have Leonard Floyd, who's been banged up this offseason. It looks like he's going to play. What do you get from Hollins? You still got Ashawn Robinson. You've got Gaines. Like they've got some pieces up front, but I don't think they're as strong as they were last year. I think they're even more Aaron Donald dependent than they were last year and in previous years. But I mean, he's so good that it almost like doesn't matter. And then to your point, if you have to course correct for him, you know, maybe Hollins isn't that good, but guess what? If you have to consistently double team Aaron Donald all the time, somebody's getting one-on-one matchups. And then you're trying to figure out your point, your protection issues. Are you going, you know, how are you half sliding? Where are you putting the running back? Are you using any kind of chip help on the outside to disrupt the edges so that way you can allow more protection on the inside? Like what kind of games are you using and doing up front? And then also a good point from Handsome Man here. Fantastic name. Talks about they added the linebacker from Seattle, Bobby Wagner. Huge upgrade for that defense. Something we're going to talk about.
They've needed linebacker help for a while.
They have not had every year. I think that was the position where they kind of were just like, man, like they had Corey Littleton and it was like, no, we can let him go. And they had Kenny Young and they kind of like, man, and we got to stop because Jessica, I don't know, this is funny. Well, one, thank you for the super chat and thank you for being here. Two, I think it's funny that Jessica Tennis has donated talking about Jessica Pagula, who plays tennis. So Jessica Tennis pulling for a Jessica Tennis is pretty funny right now. Thank you so much for your super chat. Thank you so much for the super chat, Jessica, and for being here. And she says, pull for Jessica Pagula tomorrow versus the number one player. Yeah, in the U.S. Open down there in Flushing. Very, 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 very interesting. But the Rams are I don't think they're as strong as they were last year with who they lost. They lost Williams at corner. Obviously, they lost Von Miller. But you have a really big upgrade in Bobby Wagner. You bring back Troy Hill. All these pieces that we're going to talk about. But again, it all centers on pass rush right up the gut, affecting the depth of the pocket is the most disruptive and destructive thing to any quarterback. If Aaron Donald is a consistent force coming through the interior, whether in the run or especially the pass, it could spell doom potentially for the Buffalo Bills. That's part of the reason why I would like to see them just run duo and power for a significant portion of the night and run right at Aaron Donald and just beat the ever-loving hell out of him. Give me Roger Saffold pulling and just beating up Aaron Donald time after time after time after time. But we will see. Anything else on Aaron Donald?
I mean, not much. We covered a lot on Aaron Donald. It's
He's
going to
good.
be tough to, it's going to be tough to mitigate all of that because I mean, you're never going to stop Aaron Donald. You just hope to limit his impact.
Yeah, you're just trying to contain him. And I mean, it's kind of like what Von Miller said in his presser Saturday, when he was talking about Stafford and Kupp and Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald, like all these guys, like you're not stopping them. You're just trying to figure out how to make one more play than them and win the game. Like that's what you're doing. Like you're not going to, and well, we're going to get to when we talk about Kupp, like it's very hard, especially in today's NFL, to like shut someone out offensively. But then on the flip side, it's the defensive piece. Like Aaron Donald is going to make plays. It's just a matter of, does he make plays that change the game and swing the pendulum that far in favor for the Rams? I also think a sneaky little thing to watch as well. Again, what type of defensive fronts that the Rams use in this game, considering again who they've lost this offseason. Von Miller changed the way they were able to run some fronts. Right. And then again, the loss of Sebastian Joseph Day, I think, is huge. Do they have to use more traditional 4-down fronts? And we know what they like to do with 2 high coverages, which we're going to talk about. I think it's a sneaky little piece to keep an eye on as well. Because again, then you're just using Aaron Donald as a 3-tech and a 4-down front, which is still like really scary.
Yeah.
And then we go from there. Let's move on to our next topic. Do you want to I'm going to leave this up to you because I gave you a hard time when you first came on. Do you want to do Bills defense focus topic, or do you want to do the Bills offense focus topic?
Stick with Bills offense for now. Stay on the same side of the ball.
You froze for a minute as you went out. I was like, wow, he's taking a long time to think about this. You want to stay on the same side of the ball. So we're going Bills overs, right? Okay. So
good timing.
Good time. It froze on you being like this. And I was like, wow, this is a hard decision for him. And then I was like, oh no, wait, he froze. Yeah, he's super poised right now. All right. So this is one of the things we talked about coming into. This is more macro, but with micro elements to it.
Yeah.
So what we talk about now in the NFL, as I alluded to in the intro, 2 high shells pre-snap from defenses, light boxes, odd fronts, and playing with 4 eyes with your defensive ends, 4-eye technique, not literally 4 eyes, playing with a 4. Just think some people might not know. Using your defensive ends in a 4-eye technique, using bare fronts, using that tight front, the emphasis of the star position or that apex defender. The Rams are patient zero for so much of this. Brandon Staley studied under Vic Fangio. Brandon Staley came and took a lot of those Fangio principles and just kind of made an extension of those Fangio principles with this defense and just did miraculous things several years ago with the Rams. So good, in fact, that it caused him to become the head coach of the Chargers last season. This stylistic fight is just, again, like we talked about earlier, what the Rams have been designed to do is stop offenses like the Buffalo Bills. And the thing that when you're the Rams that you don't want to see them do, and Brandon Staley has talked about this, like what's the one thing you don't want to see? Quick hitting runs coming right at you, downhill, fast in a hurry. Something that the Bills necessarily haven't done holistically, but they did a little bit last year when they used more power runs. It's almost like you've got a fire and then somebody brings a bucket of water to pour on that fire. And it's like, okay, is that water enough to put the flame out, or is that flame too much and too hot and too strong that the water just doesn't do anything? You literally have something that, not that water was designed to put out fire, but you have something that is designed or has a purpose to put out this one thing. Mm-hmm. It's literally like a clash of styles and a clash of the Titans when it comes to what the Bills are offensively. What they've ascended to is part of the overall structural shift in NFL philosophy offensively. What the Bills have become and other offenses like them resulted in the Rams and these other defenses changing who they are to what they are now. And the Rams have been so good at it for so long. Raheem Morris takes over for Brandon Staley. Last year was his first year in this type of scheme and system, and things still worked out really well. And now he comes into year 2, just like, this is just such an exciting piece because how the Rams are designed, they're designed to stop offenses like the Bills.
Yeah, and now it's finally time for the Bills to pivot and show defenses around the league that they're not that same offense that they've been the past 2 years, that they can show a little bit of multiplicity. And you're not going to be able to defend them one way, and there's not some sort of secret blueprint. And that's kind of the key that we've kind of been hoping for all offseason with this multiplicity talk, because you make that blueprint impossible to build if you can do everything even average to above average. You don't have to be great in every area, but if you're average to above average in
the threat is there.
Areas of offense, it's really, really hard to create this holistic blueprint to stop you. But yeah, I mean, you're spot on with just analyzing the Rams defense. Yeah, really my key takeaway with this in terms of like matchups is going to be the running back specifically versus these light boxes and even some zone coverage. I'll get to the zone coverage bit at the end, but
teaser.
The Rams were first in the league last year in light box usage percentage last season. They were 12th in the league versus the run specifically in light box usage.
And they were in light boxes 76% of the time.
Yeah.
That's
a lot.
So 8 out of every 10.
Yeah.
And what's all, just to build on that, not to cut you off.
No, you're good.
So they were in light boxes 76% of the time, which is unreal. Okay. So that just set the table for everyone so we understand. 76% of the time they're in light boxes. Despite that, they only gave up explosive runs 10% of the time on defense. An explosive run is defined as a run. That's nuts. An explosive run is defined as a run of 10 yards or more. They had 494 run defense snaps, including the playoffs. 494 run defense snaps. They only had 48 explosive runs given up. That was the 7th lowest in the entire NFL. But again, think of it from a numbers perspective, percentage, right? So 10% average explosive run rate allowed, 7th in the league, 7th lowest. The Saints were first at 8%. They were only 2 percentage points lower than the Rams. The Rams use these light boxes and it just screams, run at us, run at us, run at us. And then teams run and they're not pulling off these big gashing runs. And it's because they're so structurally and fundamentally sound in playing with those 4 eyes and playing with that technique to mug up the middle. They don't let you run right at them. They make you string it out, and they take their 2nd and 3rd level defenders and they rally and force you to the choke point or the kill point, and they make those tackles. Like, again, that's nuts. 76% of the time they're running light boxes.
And they're still stopping the run and limiting explosive.
Now, that doesn't mean you're not getting like 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, which is still good.
But it's counterintuitive.
Correct. Those things don't, like, they don't coalesce. You don't think that those things go together.
Yeah. So, and then on top of that, not only were they first in the league with light box usage, they were 3rd in too high usage. So, like, both of those things are telling you, okay, so they got people from depth, and they don't even have a lot of people in the box. Like, it's just layers on layers on layers screaming, run the football, right? So, obviously, we've talked about it all offseason, the idea of the Bills actually running the football when these defenses bait you with these too high light boxes. And for a majority of the season, the Bills' run game was more reliant on Josh Allen than Devin Singletary and Zach Moss, in my opinion. And in a week 1 game, when you're trying to limit injuries to your star quarterback, and I mean, really everyone, but more importantly, your star quarterback, it would be really nice to establish the identity with a ground attack stemming from the running backs and using the quarterback rush as a complementary weapon rather than a foundational weapon. So that's kind of my hope moving forward through the season, but it's really hammered home for week 1 because, I mean, why would you want to even expose yourself to that risk in week 1, letting Josh Allen get hit like that? So, I mean, that's just kind of a more specific argument about using the running backs more, but going on to, I guess, how to attack this, my initial thought, and I want to ask you, because you already alluded to how Brandon Staley has said running straight at these tight fronts and duo or power just dives straight up the middle, stuff like that to just get right after it. My initial thought when I see light boxes, too high shells, my initial thought is inside runs, but inside zones. So you can allow those offensive linemen to climb to the 2nd level defenders and get a piece of them to open up those explosive plays. But do you think otherwise?
No, again, inside zone is similar to, that's why like that debate is always like, is this run inside zone or duo? Yeah, like in anything that builds upon that vertical displacement for a defensive line, I'm all about. So it could be a halfback lead, it could be an ISO run inside, it could be a Y insert, it could be dives, it could be duo, it could be inside zone. I don't care. Like attack.
Get vertical.
And
with
yes,
the run.
that vertical displacement. And again, either way, whether it's duo or an inside zone, fundamentally you're operating in a similar space where it's predicated upon creating double teams, moving everybody out, climbing to the second level, creating that vertical displacement. I think either of those work. Now, if the Rams are using more of a 4-down front than previous years because of the personnel that they've lost, I think that maybe potentially changes how you attack, and maybe you do go more outside zone and trying to get to the perimeter and stress them and stretch them a little bit that way. But as of right now, based on what we know this defense is fundamentally and philosophically, I think you attack them. You get them where they don't want to be got. And now, granted, that's easier said than done because of Aaron Donald, and they still Gaines is still solid on the interior. So is Ashawn Robinson. But I think if you do it enough, eventually I think it starts to pay off in the third quarter and the fourth quarter, should you need it, where you're just leaning on guys and grinding and grinding. And it may not pay off in the first quarter and second quarter, but it shows up late and makes things easy as that war of attrition really starts to hit. Yeah, creating that vertical displacement, however way, inside zone duo, I'm all about it against the Rams.
That war of attrition point, though, that really hammers home my idea about establishing the identity with the ground attack from the running backs, because that is the point. Like, it may not pay off right away, but you keep doing it, you keep wearing these defenses down, because it's a physical brand of football. When you're passing the football as much as the Bills had the last 2 years, it's still, you're bringing a physical element because it's a physical sport, but it's not even touching the physical element of running the football like the Titans do. It's just a different kind of game. So
and it's a different mindset.
Get a fraction of that. If we could just get a fraction of that, it's a big W.
Yes, and just to build on your point there, like, it's also different. We've heard it so many times from like offensive linemen. They like running the football. There's just something different about being able to come out of your stance and just maul dudes instead of having to snap the ball and get up and pass protect where you're on your heels. They want to be the aggressor. They want to take it to defensive. It's a mindset thing. Like, it changes your mentality and your identity. There's also something different as well. Call it like old school sentimentality or whatever. There's something different about like getting the ball passed on you for yards and points versus having someone run it at you and run it down your throat. That's when your soul gets taken. When somebody just grinds on you and takes your soul by running the ball on you time and time again, and you can't do anything to stop it. That is a helpless feeling of vulnerability. It's just different in a variety of ways. Yes, points are points, yards are yards, but there's something different when you can run the football.
Yeah. So, that's my first point with the running back, specifically in the running game, and how I think that they can attack these light boxes and these too high shells and try to take advantage of it, even though those numbers don't suggest so favorably. It's all counterintuitive in that way. But I still think that the Bills need to try it, because it's something that it seems like they've been trying to work towards this offseason. So seeing that in week 1 would be very encouraging from us. But also, I want to see the running backs in the passing game a little bit. And this kind of brings me back to the second game versus the Pats, and seeing Josh Allen take what the defense is
in New England.
Yeah. Because the Rams, not only, like I said, light box, too high shell usage, but they're also third in zone coverage usage last season. So if they plan on dropping into zone from too high shells and there's not a lot going on, like right behind the interior of the Bills' offensive line, I want to see the running backs get a lot of swing routes, flat routes, like check and release curl routes, things like that.
Take advantage of the space underneath,
but also control those flat defenders. Like, not necessarily just take what they're getting. Like, it goes two ways. Either bring them forward, bring those flat defenders forward, and you open up the second level window for Josh Allen to drop it over them. Drop it over them, but under the safeties, or they drop too deep, and you utilize the checkdowns, and let's see what James Cook can do after the catch when he has that kind of space. The space that we saw Devin Singletary have against the Patriots in that game. They drop too quick. You pass it to Singletary while they're still dropping, and Singletary's catching the ball with 6 yards ahead of him.
Bentley and Hightower were just bailing in their drops. And there was just literally like 8 to 9 yards of space. Allen he wasn't even looking to the rest of his progression because he saw it coming. He would just hit a 3-step drop, stop, and literally just dump it right over the line to Singletary, and you had a quick 9 to 11 yards.
Exactly. And obviously a lot of this, I wanted to keep it grouped in on the running backs, but this does project out to like the Dawson Knoxes. If he's just being a flat control route, like he's still eligible in this conversation of control those flat defenders.
Yes.
Try to make them dictate to them. Should they come up or do they need to drop back, and play with them in a way where they can never be right? Because if you're going to live in these too high, keep everything in front of you kind of thing defense, you need to stress those flat defenders, because that's how you're going to get the best of these defenses. You're not going to beat them over the top. You need to bring them forward, force them forward, or if they want to keep going back, you take what they're giving you.
Yeah. That's the fun, like the philosophical, like fundamental debate, right? With these, because again, everything with these too high shells, basically, and too high coverages in general, what defenses are doing now, they're trying to put a roof on offenses. They're trying to limit explosives. They're trying to keep everything in front of them. So what you can do one of two things. Well, you can do several, but these are the main two. First, you can just keep trying to attack vertically. If they don't want to get beat vertically, you just push it harder and you still try to take the top off the defense in a variety of ways. It's the joke I always make is the episode from The Office where Michael is dating Pam's mom, and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to date her harder. Like, that's what you need to do. You just need to date Pam's mom harder. They don't want you to go over the top. Push it further. Try and go over the top and take the top off. Or run them out of those too high looks, either by running the ball successfully or via extensions of the run game, whether it's screens, whether it's checkdowns, whether it's any aspect of that game that, exactly to your point, you start to make those defenders have to come up. Because eventually, if you keep beating them death by 1,000 cuts, eventually somebody starts to creep up somehow, some way. And that's that balance. Where do you attack? They're trying to protect A. Do you try and storm the castle and go at A even harder? Or because they've allocated resources towards A, do you attack B, which makes them have to allocate resources to B, in which case you then go back and attack A and just rinse and repeat. That's where that debate really comes in. And appreciate you, David. Thank you so much. That's where that piece comes in. And there's so many, you alluded to some of these numbers. I really just wanted to highlight some of the numbers too, from an advanced metric perspective for the Rams. Their defense. So we mentioned the light boxes piece, and then 70% of the time they're in a too high safety look pre-snap, which the Bills do at times often, which allows them to disguise coverages post-snap. Because you have those looks when you're in a too high look pre-snap or in that too high shell, you can either sit in or you can spin a safety down. You can do a variety of games, run a variety of coverages. It's easier to come and play top down from a coverage perspective than it is to be in a single high look pre-snap and then rotate, spin back potentially. But there's a lot of options that you have when you start in those too high shells. It allows them to disguise those coverages. And then if you look at their post-snap coverages, they're very balanced. So 43% of the time, middle of the field closed coverages, which are, so middle of the field closed, in case anyone doesn't know, those are your single high coverages, your cover 1, your cover 3. So 43% of the time, they're in coverages with a single high safety. 39% of the time, they're in middle of the field open coverage, which are your too high safety looks. So 43% single high post snap, 39% too high post snap. Very balanced. You almost don't know what's coming. And I think that's a credit to their ability to disguise looks pre-snap with those too high shells. They play games with you. And then, Kendall, you mentioned some of the zone coverage, 67% zone coverage, 15% man coverage. And then again, it's all about what are you trying to do with these defenses, okay? You're trying to keep the top on, the roof on. You're trying to limit explosives. Explosive pass plays or pass plays of 20 yards or more. They had an 8% explosive pass rate allowed last year, which was 10th. They had 61 explosive pass plays allowed on defense on 700. This is still like crazy. Like they only allowed 61 explosive pass plays on 788 pass defense snaps, which is from a volume perspective, a lot. And also for a fun fact, the Eagles and the Bills were tied at first at 6% in terms of explosive pass rate allowed on defense, which at this point we know is a calling card of the Bills defense in terms of keep everything in front of them.
Right.
Make them have to take, the slow and methodical approach to beat you. And I'm very interested to see, exactly to your point, like what the Bills do in the run game, because an interesting piece that I wanted to hit on from last year, the Bills had a 13% explosive run rate. So again, those are runs of 10 yards or more. That was fifth most in the entire NFL. Granted, Kendall, to your point, like several of those are going to be Josh Allen runs. And when I say several, I mean a lot. Like Josh Allen's going to factor into that. But Devin Singletary had a bunch of 10 plus yard carries down the stretch. The Bills had a 13% explosive run rate last year. Fifth most. Again, that's a potential matchup winner if they can hit those runs. And then you combine with them, 34% gap runs last year, which was the 11th most. And we saw a huge increase in that down the stretch where they were running gap over 50% of the time. Do we see more zone run this year with what we've seen in the preseason with the addition of Aaron Cromer? And then from a personnel perspective, how you attack this Rams defense. Bills were in 11 personnel 71% of the time. So 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. 11 personnel 71% of the time, sixth most. This is a number we've talked about on this next number on one of the shows that we've done together. We've done so many at this point. They were in 21 personnel 10% of the time last year, which was the 8th most in the NFL. I would like to see more Reggie Gilliam in this game potentially. If you're going to get light boxes, and then what's the number we were talking about in the DM earlier, whether it was between nickel and dime or whatever have you, those 4-2-5 formations, the Rams are over 80% with 5 defensive backs on the field. Like the majority of their snaps come in nickel or dime formations that are, again, defensive back heavy, combined with, so here's the piece, right? They use a lot of formations defensively that rely on more defensive backs than linebackers or defensive linemen is what you need to focus on at the end of the day. Then you combine that with their linebacker depth. Bobby Wagner is fantastic. Ernest Jones is a nice piece. After that, they don't really have answers. Do you try and put them into a scenario where they have to use another linebacker or use their defensive backs to fit the run because you're going 21 personnel with Reggie Gilliam? And when the Bills go 21 personnel with Reggie Gilliam, they run power, they run counter, they run at you, physical, pounding types of runs. You potentially put the Rams into a dilemma based on their personnel formations that they used last year and based on what the Bills can potentially do. Then you combine that with, again, so we've got all these pieces. We've got a team that loves to use 5 defensive backs or more a heavy majority of the time, a team that doesn't have a ton of linebacker depth, and a team that likes to play light boxes 76% of the time. And that light box piece isn't unique to last year. This is what the Rams have been for the last several years. This is why they are the blueprint for so many modern NFL defenses, because of their ability to fit the run despite using light boxes. Those two things shouldn't go together. You shouldn't be able to fit the run that well when you're giving light boxes as much as the Rams do. That's why they are that patient zero. That's why they are that blueprint. So take a team that gives you these light boxes, doesn't really have the linebacker depth to put a third linebacker on the field, likes to use a lot of defensive backs. Maybe we see a bunch of 21 personnel in this game. I would like to see it established at some point because of the physicality aspect and because of the potential to be used in the run to establish the run early, Kendall, like you said. But then also, what's a way to generate explosives in today's NFL? The Rams offense does it a ton. Play action. Let's get some 21 personnel. Let's get some play action. Let's hit Gabriel Davis deep vertically against a too high look like we saw in Kansas City on that 75-yard touchdown to Gabriel Davis. You start to work in some Stephon Diggs. Maybe you throw some Y cross in there with Dawson Knox and you let him. I love Bobby Wagner and I think he's great. I don't think he's running with Dawson Knox at this point in his career. I don't know how many linebackers are. Go with some, like there's a lot of ways in which the Bills functionally, with what they have personnel-wise on their roster, there's a lot of, we use this phrasing all the time, there's a lot of dials that they can turn up and down to really stress the Rams defense based on how the Rams defense is built. And, it's just so, like, even if you're not a Bills fan, even if you're not a Rams fan, this matchup is just so exciting because it's literally a defense that was built to stop the kind of offense the Buffalo Bills are. And then it becomes like, okay, do the Rams have the horses to run with the Bills' horses? Like, who wins this chess match? What type of tweaks do we have? Ken Dorsey is a first-year offensive coordinator and play caller. This is a piece, too, that we haven't even touched on. Ken Dorsey is a first-year offensive coordinator and play caller. going up against a very seasoned defensive coordinator in Raheem Morris,
Yeah.
who's coming off a Super Bowl win in his first. That's even piece 2. In his first year, right? His first year as defensive coordinator with the Rams in a new system.
Yeah.
That he did the anti-Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan came in and took over this 4-down front Bills defense and said, you know what? No, I am running 3-4, and we're going to run zone blitzes and fire zone, and I'm going to drop Mario Williams into coverage, and I'm doing all this. Oh, Jim Schwartz, you were fantastic. Nope, you're out. We're running my system. Rex tried to make everybody bend to his will. He tried to fit square pegs into round holes. Raheem Morris came in and said, okay, here's what's working for this defense already. Here's the personnel that I have. Okay, how can I tweak my system to fit what we have? Raheem Morris is a very smart, experienced defensive coordinator going up against a very inexperienced and psychopathic offensive coordinator and first-time play caller in Ken Dorsey. That's also a huge piece too. Like, especially in week 1, teams don't know who they are in week 1. Week 1 is very matchup dependent and adjustment dependent. This is the game where, and adjustments are a huge part of the NFL in general, but especially in week 1, when you're trying to find your footing and find who you are, what dials do you turn and tweak? And if you're going from an experience perspective and a known quantity, Bills offense versus Rams defense, it's advantage Rams defense from a coaching perspective because of Raheem Morris. Even if you're very high on Ken Dorsey, Raheem Morris's track record is very impressive. And that's a huge piece that I feel like we also don't talk about enough.
That adjustment part that you were just talking on is exactly why I made the comments about the flats, because I mean, anytime you can make a defense or a team in general have to adjust on the fly, I feel like that's the better avenue to go with. And you brought up the analogy of like, okay, they allocated resources to A. Do we just go at A even harder? Or do we just go to B? I would choose to go to B every single time because it makes that team adjust to that strategy.
Yes.
And then you can continue piecing together, okay, how did they just adjust? Now we can go at them in the way we intended to the entire time. We just couldn't because they were defending it well. So I'm always pro make that other team adjust and dictate to them that they have to adjust versus the other way around.
Take it to them right away. I got distracted by this comment real quick. I wanted to address it. Devin says, what exactly is that on the tree? It's hard to tell, but it's green and silver garland with little brown footballs on it. And so the little things you see hanging off, those are little footballs. I know it's tough to see from your vantage point, but football kicks off this week. We had preseason football last month. So the garland was green and white to make it look like a football field. Now we have official regular season football kicking off. So we still got some green along with some little footballs in there to kind of be symbolic. That's what we went with. Awesome question from Devin. This is, again, this whole show is just a medium and an excuse to be able to showcase the tree, which is the light of my life, no pun intended. But that's the great piece. I am so eager to see how the Bills come out and attack this Rams defense, right? Like, what do they try and establish early? What do they try to get to? How do the Rams counter? How do the Rams come out, right? Like, because again, we keep talking about the front piece, Sebastian Joseph Day being gone, Von Miller being gone. Leonard Floyd is good, but he's a little banged up. And even if Floyd is solid, you're really relying on Floyd and Donald, hoping you get something out of Hollins. What does Spencer Brown look like? Is it even Spencer Brown? Is it Quessenberry? What does Bates look like? What does Saffold? There's so many variables and so many questions within the bigger picture. And then the bigger picture again is this defense that is designed to be the antithesis and the antidote to what you are offensively. And they're very good at it. Again, I can't hit that number home enough. The fact that the Rams run light boxes 76% of the time, and they only average a 10% average explosive run rate allowed, which is the 7th lowest. And they're only 2 percentage points off the team that's number 1. They only allowed 48 explosive runs on 494 run defense snaps, knowing that they run light boxes 76% of the time. Like,
doesn't make sense.
No, because
literally everything points to run the ball at us, please.
Yes.
And then you see that and you're like,
and
wait,
it doesn't work. And what we're saying, these other teams are like, well, let's just run it right at them. But it hasn't worked. And a part of me thinks it's because, again, it's not only the scheme and the structure, which is very sound, it's the players in it. I think Sebastian Joseph Day was a huge piece for that. You don't have him. What do you start to roll with up front? And then they're thinner on that defensive line. So even if Gaines is crushing it and Floyd and Ashawn Robinson, They don't have the rotation. They don't have the hockey change style lines like the Bills do. That's also part of the reason why I want to run at them, gas them, lean on them, wear them out. So come third and fourth quarter, they're done. So especially early in the year, players don't have their legs yet. They're not in game shape in week one. So run them up and down the field, lean on them, bury them, put them in the dirt, make them have to pick their ass up off the turf time and time again. That wears you down. Oh, excited for football. Sorry.
Whew. Do you want to see quick tempo, or do you think that could also go against the Bills because obviously everyone's not in game shape?
It depends on what the Bills are. I love tempo as just like a general rule of thumb. I don't like to lean on it too much. I just like to vary it. Like, so
fair enough. Okay.
The Bills could have an 8-play drive. I'd like to see some tempo and some quick and some potential no huddle or muddle huddle. Give me that like 3 to 4 times. Not every drive, but alternate and vary it. I want to do anything that keeps the defense off balance to the point where I don't want them to be like, well, we know they're going to go tempo. I want them to be like, are they going to go tempo? Are they going tempo? Are they not going tempo? What are we? I want that. I want that.
So you're saying multiplicity.
Shock that multiplicity comes back through for us on this show. We talk about it so much. Yeah, that matchup is a hugely important piece and a very exciting piece. And then on the flip side, we're talking Bills defense versus Rams offense. The specific point we want to talk about in this matchup, and I think maybe it's not a secret or it's known to a degree. I think people only know about it because of where Cooper Kupp lines up, but the formational versatility that the Rams have. This offense is the brainchild of Sean McVay, who's one of the best offensive minds in all of football. They use condensed formations. They get 5 out in the route distribution with chip help and nudge blocks. They have play action and boots that create explosives. They run outside zone, inside zone, duo. You've got Cooper Kupp as a receiver who's one of the best receivers in the NFL, functioning in the slot 66% of the time. And he's out there blocking defensive ends and linebackers. And it's not like he's just like giving a shoulder. He's coming off the ball and forming them up. He's base blocking edges and linebackers as if he's a tight end or much bigger than he is. Not that he's small, but you've got that formational versatility that they have, and just knowing that McVay knows how to turn dials up and down. You've got the addition of Allen Robinson as a potential true X receiver in this offense, something that they have not had. I really like Robert Woods a lot. I like Odell Beckham. Neither of them have the body type or the skill set that Allen Robinson has functioning in this offense. Not to mention, again, from a size perspective, he's 6'2", 220 pounds. The only thing that's scarier for an offense from a blocking perspective than having Cooper Kupp on the offense against your defense is having the other receiver be 6'2", 220 pounds and be able to get at you. Like, that's a matchup problem in the run game as well. There's so much to like with this Rams offense, with how they attack and what they do. And then you've got some of the questions for the Bills. What does their defensive line rotation look like on the interior? Do they want to throw light boxes at the Rams and try and stop those explosives? And are they going to be able to handle? It's the opposite of the Rams question. If the Bills go light boxes, can they hold up with those light boxes against the Rams defense? What does Taron Johnson look like in the slot against Cooper Kupp? Where do they use Cooper Kupp? Do they decide in this game, you know what? Let's not use him in the slot. Let's keep him outside because we're going to take our chances against the rookies. We're going to put Allen Robinson and Cooper Kupp on the outside and make one of them have to go up against Kyer Elam or Christian Benford, and we're going to see what's up. Or we'd rather take our chances with Elam or Benford or Dane Jackson versus Taron Johnson. An offense that knows how to exploit weaknesses, that is already tough to defend because of the chess match opportunity and the versatility that they have. This is a huge piece as well. Like, I'm so excited for this game. The Rams have an innate ability, and I shouldn't even say innate. It's because of the personnel they have and how good of a play caller and play designer Sean McVay is. The Rams can get to almost everything from the same look almost every single time. They run 11 personnel 84% of the time. So they are in 3 wide receiver sets 84% of the time. They were in 2021. That was the most in the NFL. And then they were in 12 personnel, 1 receiver, 2 tight end sets 13% of the time, which was 29th. Those 2 personnel groupings, that's 97% of all their offensive plays in 2021. So they are a heavy 11 personnel team. And they're able to do that because of Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods before he went down. But these players, that can line up anywhere. It's what we've talked about and being excited with Khalil Shakir.
Yeah.
You have a receiver who can, okay, he can line up on the outside. Okay, he can line up in the slot. Okay, he can run any route from either of those alignments. Okay, he can line up hipped off the tight end and block, whether it's a nickel defender or digging out a safety or a linebacker or an edge or functioning on those inserts and leading running backs up to the hole. So many opportunities for the versatility that they have. And man, like I can't stress enough their ability to get to a majority of the menu without having to change personnel, and also being able to do it out of the same formations. Like just they play games with it, and it's hard. Like there's no tendency giveaways a lot with the Rams. You're looking at their formation. It could be here's formation A. They can run inside zone out of it, outside zone out of it, play action. They can run boots. They can run a screen. They can run verticals. They can motion some guys and give chip help and try and stretch you on the underneath and the intermediate and vertical. They can create explosives out of it. Like they can get to so much just from one basic, simple formational alignment. It's gonna test this Bills defense from a communication standpoint and a play recognition standpoint.
Yeah, it's been the foundation really for this McVay offense in LA really since he got there. I mean, it was really the crux of it. And yeah, being able to disguise it all from an offensive side is really crazy, and he does a great job with it. That point about boots does definitely scare me. The play action boots definitely scares me a little bit. I feel like the Bills are just a little bit susceptible to that. Like all those games against Tennessee come back to my mind. Obviously, it's a little bit different when you're defending Tennessee, kind of over allocating to stop the run, and that play action will bite you a little bit harder. Versus the Rams. I mean, I don't anticipating them being that run heavy, but it's still a little fearful. The other thought, man, Allen Robinson, pairing someone with his body type with Matt Stafford is just like a match made in heaven. You know,
somebody who can put the ball right on you.
Kenny Galladay's, the Megatrons. Obviously, he's not at those levels. I mean, well, Kenny Galladay's kind of come back down to earth since he went to New York. But point being, someone who can go up and get contested catches. That's scary to me because Stafford always likes those type of guys where it's just like, you know what? It's a 50-50 ball, but I trust my guy. He really likes those kind of guys. So I hadn't thought of that until now. But I'm specifically very interested in like the chess match of personnels because obviously you mentioned how the Rams were first in 11 personnel usage last year, and I anticipate them doing that a lot this year. I mean, don't get me wrong, but
also them not having Van Jefferson in this game.
That's literally the point. Like, this is all very dependent. No, you're good. You hit it. This is all very dependent on Van Jefferson's health. Like, if he plays, he's the only player on their injury list. If he plays, this could change everything, and this conversation could be a moot point. But if he doesn't, or he's not 100%, like, are they going to want to go out in 11 personnel if he can't go or he's not 100% when your other options are Tutu Atwell or Ben Skowronek or Brandon Powell? I don't even know how to say his name. Like, it's just...
He dropped that big vertical shot in the NFC Championship against the 49ers. That's the only reason I really know him. And his name is super unique and hard to say.
It is. It sure is. But so like, that's the point. Like, even if Jefferson's good to go, but he's not 100%, with those names that I just mentioned, I gotta imagine the Rams would prefer to go with Bryson Hopkins and run 12 personnel with him and Higbee. And furthermore, it could be advantageous for them to try and run Taron Johnson off the field. I don't know if the Bills would bite on that, and that's kind of why I was talking about this as more of a chess match. I don't know who's going to bite where, but I got to imagine that's in the back of McVay's mind where, okay, we know that these rookies have to play for them early, so we should try to do whatever we can to get Taron Johnson off the field because, in all honesty, Taron Johnson might be the best cover corner who's healthy right now in the cornerback room. So you think about it from that perspective, do they want to do that? And then would the Bills bite if the Rams went to 12 personnel? Would they stay in nickel or would they take Taron off the field for Benford? Because likely that would force Kupp onto either Jackson, Elam, or Benford. And you mentioned that earlier. you got to think that that's in McVay's mind. Find ways to get Kupp on anyone other than Teron Johnson, because I think if Teron Johnson's on Cooper Kupp, that plays into the Bills' favor, at least relative to who else could be covering Cooper Kupp.
Well, Taron Johnson is so underrated as a nickel corner. I think nickel corners in general are underrated. I think he's underrated. I think Kenny Moore is underrated. I think just these guys who play nickel don't get treated with the same level of respect. I wanted to highlight this comment. This guy keeps talking about how Josh Allen is horrible under center and he can't process. I just think it's funny because he's just like super wrong, but do you appreciate the view? It's such a fun matchup piece to talk about Rams offense versus Bills defense from that like niche perspective. And what's also interesting with it, I'm very interested to see the explosive plays piece. So you look at the Rams offense last year, 79 explosive pass plays. Again, that's including the playoffs. 2 explosive pass plays are pass plays of 20 yards or more. Including the playoffs, they had 79 explosive pass plays generated in 2021. They had an average explosive pass rate of 11%, which was also second. That's the Rams offense. The Bills defense, as I mentioned earlier, 6% explosive pass rate allowed in 2021, which was tied for first. That's also including the playoffs. They allowed 40 explosive passes on 658 pass plays. I think that's a huge piece. There's 2 ways that the Rams really get to those explosive looks. They'll go spread and they'll put their running back and their tight end almost like attached to the formation. They'll chip the 2 edges. They'll let their other 3 receivers in the route distribution run. Usually they're running some kind of sail concept when the check down or chip guys release out into the flats, but they're running some kind of vertical and an out, a vertical and a corner. They're running deep overs, things to really stress you in the intermediate and vertical aspect of the field. And then what's nice for the Rams, they'll take those chippers and they'll release them out into the route distribution, which creates a natural check down. So if those vertical shots aren't there for Stafford, he has an easy outlet. Then you combine that with their play action ability and their boot percentage, which both of those are high. The Rams in 2021 ran play action 21% of the time, which was 8th most, and they had designed rollouts 11% of the time, which was the most in the NFL. They use play action and they use bootlegs, as a majority of NFL teams do now, to create those shot plays and those explosives. The Bills, last year, the year before, year after year, we know Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier, their philosophy, almost to the chagrin of fans at times because they think it's too conservative. They don't give up shot plays. They don't give up those explosives. That's such a huge piece, the formational versatility and what the Rams can get to out of it, and then how the Rams generate explosives versus how the Bills don't let teams generate explosives. Right. Like so much of the NFL nowadays, like I hate to simplify it, but got to stop. Awesome comment, Mike. He says Tree appears to be game ready and season ready. Yes, Mike. Get it, Mike. That's all we're here for. We're here for the tree. So much of the NFL, again, I hate to like simplify it. So much of it now is like, okay, whoever gets more explosive plays wins. Like explosive plays and turnovers. Like that's such a huge piece in today's NFL, given the offensive nature of it. And that chess piece, we talked about how the Rams defense is built to stop offenses like the Bills. The Bills defense is, I don't want to say a kryptonite for the Rams offense, but what they're good at is stopping what the Rams predicate their offense upon, which is their ability to generate explosive plays. Now, granted, the Rams are able to do it out of a variety of formations, and they're able to run the same look and the same formation and get to so many things which stress you. The biggest thing for this Bills defense for me, like it's that communication piece. You have to be so on point with your eyes, especially with when an offense is running condensed formations. Got to stop. We got a super chat. MDL0838. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the super chat. And he says, would it be worth looking at how the Patriots shut down the Rams in the Super Bowl? How did Belichick shut McVay's system down? One, I don't want to say it's not worth looking, but because that was a Jared Goff offense and Todd Gurley, Todd Gurley was banged up and Jared Goff was out. Todd Gurley was banged up and Jared Goff was the quarterback there. Different kind of offense. The reason McVay got Stafford was so he could have that big play capability in his quarterback. Stuff. Yes, that Jared Goff did not offer. Jared Goff was very much a timing, everything has to work right. Let me hit this in my progression on time. Boom. Stafford can do that, but he also has a cannon for an arm, and he allows you to play shot play offense. But just for reference on the back end, how Belichick shut McVay's system down, I did some work on this, I think like last year. They basically played 6 down linemen across the line of scrimmage and then played man coverage or cover 3 on the back end and just beat the hell out of the Rams guys up front. There's that one famous play where the Rams run play action and the tight end comes behind the line of scrimmage and Kyle Van Noy comes up and just crushes him and takes him out. And he's the only person that Goff had out in the route distribution at that point, and Goff takes a sack or has to dirt it. Like, they loaded the line of scrimmage. They gave the Rams no option to run, and then they trusted what they had on the back end. Granted, at that time, they also had Stephon Gilmore at corner, who was arguably the best corner in all of the NFL at that point. And then you had free safety Devin McCourty, who's fast as hell and can cover everything on the back end. But it all started with playing 6 down across the line of scrimmage and mugging everything, beating the Rams up there, and then not allowing them to get it or to get to what they wanted. And then also combined with Jared Goff's limitations and Todd Gurley's injury. But very good question, and actually a good reference. That's very fair. Yeah, explosive plays. It's what it comes down to for so much of it. And for as much as we talked about, the Rams defense, that type of defense is built to stop offenses like the Bills. The Bills defense is kind of built to stop the Rams a little bit, but it's going to come down to that execution piece and what they can do. And are they able to truly limit those explosives? And the Rams just have that ability. Again, if you're going with formation A, but you can run B through W out of formation A, your play recognition has to be so on point. A big one that I'm interested to see in this one, one of the things that Tremaine Edmonds gets knocked for is his processing and his play recognition. I'm very interested to see how he reacts to all this play action. Like, are they telling him to read and react? Is he honoring every run action and coming forward? Is he just sitting no matter what and they're not honoring it and they're going to use that front 4? What do we try and get out of this Bills defense and out of Tremaine Edmonds? I really want to see what he looks like from a mental processing standpoint, considering when you run those condensed formations, it's easy to kind of get lost in traffic because everything's condensed. If the offense is condensed, your defense is condensed. So everything is almost between the hashes. It's harder to ID everything, and it's easy to get lost in traffic and lost in trash. And those guys on the center of the defense and the spine, it's easy for them to collide, to get lost if your footwork isn't right, and you're trying to execute physically while processing everything that's coming at you mentally, and not to mention all the little things that we still haven't talked about, like the pre-snap motion and jet motion and orbit and just the variety of things that they do and the screen game and how to stress you. Like, this is a real heavyweight fight. And in a variety of ways, again, styles make fights. This is just such an exciting matchup on both sides of the ball, given from a scheme perspective, both offenses versus both defenses, and then an individual player standpoint. Like, you got some studs who are going to battle in this one.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I definitely agree with you on the limiting explosives piece, but I like big caveat to that too is Trey White. I mean, Trey White being out is a huge portion of that limiting explosives and what the Bills are used to doing and how they may have to tweak it a little bit, not being or being Trey White less.
Trey Whiteless.
But no, it's going to be a very intriguing game. Exactly like you said. Great teams strategically, but also, the personnel from each team, like just fantastic player by player matchups to watch too.
Yeah. And even within those player by player matchups, a good comment here from Silas. 1, Silas, thank you for being here. 2, thank you very much for the super chat. But Silas says so much is being made about our DBs. What about the Rams secondary not named Jalen Ramsey? I think we can exploit their back 7 with our weapons. Yeah. They lost Williams.
Safeties.
Oh, I like Nick Scott really showed up last year. Jordan Fuller's a fun piece.
Always like Jordan Fuller.
Yeah, I like Taylor Rapp. I liked him at Washington. He's like kind of their 3rd or 2nd safety, depending on how they want to use him. Yeah, but they don't have really another stud in the secondary. Burgess is fun. He's done some special teams stuff. And then Troy Hill, like we mentioned earlier, Hill comes back after he was so good in this scheme and this system. Turned that into a free agent deal and left with John Johnson to go to Cleveland last year, but now he's back. And I was a priority addition to come back. I don't think I don't think their back seven has anybody on an individual level that is like scary necessarily.
Or even close to Ramsey.
No, not at all. But I think they do. There's definitely a talent drop off versus what they had last year. But I think it's a grouping that's very much like a sum of its parts combined with the scheme and structure. Like they are fit. They're a fit for the scheme. It's just a matter of, can the Bills' talent override that scheme, or can their scheme top their scheme? That's where the battle is. But I think, much to Silas's point there, like I'm okay with Gabriel Davis and Stephon Diggs going up against anybody in the secondary that's not named Jalen Ramsey, and kind of stressing them that way.
I wonder how much Ramsey's going to line up in the slot this game too.
I wonder that too. They bump him inside and use him like, because he has a bigger corner, they use him as like almost like a nickel corner to play the run.
Would they want to do that necessarily if they know that matchup is Isaiah McKenzie?
Well, it depends on what you want to do. That way, do you just man up Isaiah McKenzie and then do you bracket Stephon Diggs? Like, because remember too how teams would play the Bills last year. They would bracket Diggs. They'd also bracket Beasley. So
yeah, right.
It depends on. I really also think it depends on. Maybe this is how the Rams are going to do. I'm a huge proponent of taking my number one corner and putting him man for man on the number 2 wide receiver, and then double covering the number 1. Yeah, doing the old Bill Belichick. Maybe they do some of that, and maybe it's Ramsey on Davis. But I think given Jalen Ramsey's tenaciousness and what verb or word do I want to use here? Prickly nature. I think he's going to cover Stephon Diggs. I think he wants that matchup. I think he's going to voice that he wants that matchup. Yeah. It's just a matter of what coverage they play on the back end. Something I did want to grab. Question here from MB41. He says, do you think it's a good idea to look at how the 49ers defend Aaron Donald? They seem to always have a way to slow him when we're playing the Rams. And I like that comment. And then this comment here from Kenny that said, need to do what the 49ers do on defense. They're 6-1 the last 7 games against the Rams. I wanted to highlight this one as well. Something the Niners did and the Packers did, which I liked a lot. They went heavy zone defense against the Rams in their matchups with them last year. The Niners beat them both times in the regular season. If Jaquiski Tartt comes down with that interception in the NFC Championship, the game, the Niners beat them for a third time. The Packers beat them handedly in Green Bay, despite what the final score was. All 3 of those games that I watched, the Niners both times and the Packers that one, they went heavy zone defenses, 2 high shells, a lot of quarters coverage, but on third downs, especially third and short, but third and medium, third and long, they would go press man across the board. On the slot receivers, on the outside, they would get physical and disrupt the timing. And then, granted, the Packers coupled that with Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith. The Niners coupled that with Eric Armstead and Nick Bosa and, coming off the edge and DJ Jones and their whole rotating line of just monsters up front. But it was interesting to see them couple a heavy zone scheme and a heavy zone game plan, and then use man in certain areas when advantageous to really take advantage of certain situations and matchups. And I really liked what the Niners did from that. And, it's an exciting time. Yeah. I'm sad that we have to wind down now on this episode of Disguise Coverage. But for those who don't know, I'm doing the film room with Eric Turner in about 42 minutes. So that's where we're starting to wind down here on this show. Kendall, we still got some time left, though, as we're going to continue talking here. Kendall, final thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, philosophies, ideologies, anything that you feel like we haven't addressed for this show, for this game, for this moment. Actually, I'm going to stop you real quick. Something I haven't addressed. I like to bring it up at different times. The sponsor of the show, One Pie Pizza, the best pizza in Buffalo, New York, hands down. The online menu can be found in the episode show notes. Click it, call, order online, whatever have you. Get yourself some of the best pizza in Buffalo. Delicious sweet sauce pie, cup and char pepperoni, fantastic cheese to sauce ratio, homemade blue cheese, good people making good pizza. They do a lot of initiatives and drives for the community and the city as a whole and at large. They're fantastic. Again, online menu can be found in the episode show notes here on YouTube or anyone on the podcasting apps or platforms. Get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Kendall, the floor is yours once again. Anything that you really want to hit or go over that we feel like we haven't touched on that you're going to be watching for, you think is important to note coming into this game?
I mean, we touched a lot. It's kind of hard to sift through and think of anything that we didn't touch, really. The point I keep coming back to is really like how the Rams have improved their second level and their linebackers. Because I mean, I think back to that matchup in 2020, the comeback win that we had against them.
Oh, where they came back and then the Bills came back?
Yeah, the COVID season. Yeah, I think about that season, and I always think about the Rams and how you should attack their defense, at least in the air, through the middle of the field. And I don't know how true that is anymore. And obviously, when you're running two high shells and, middle of the field is open and your linebackers aren't all that great, the middle of the field is very enticing. But I mean, things change when you draft a nice third round guy like Ernest Jones and you pick up a guy like Bobby Wagner. So, I mean, things change in that way. For that 2020 game, I was thinking, Cole Beasley game through and through is going to be a big game for him. Just sneak over the middle. But I just don't see that this year. It's going to have to be a lot more nuanced, a lot more multiple and attack in various ways, kind of like death by 1,000 cuts kind of thing. Yeah, it's going to be a great battle. I mean, we've talked about it for literally an hour and 20 minutes now. It's just a fantastic battle of two teams that kind of do exactly what you need to do to mitigate the other. And it's going to be very interesting to see how both teams counter and pivot one another and adjust to everything that they're doing. So I'm ready, man.
I'm ready, man. I second that.
Ready.
My big thing, and I mentioned it a little, but my big, I don't want to say like takeaway or thing I'm looking towards in addition, other than the matchups, I really just want to see the adjustments that are made by each team. But if we're going to focus on the Bills, I want to see real live bullets for Ken Dorsey. What does he look like in his first 15, his scripted plays to come out? What is he trying to establish? What is he trying to, test and poke and prod? What type of vulnerabilities is he trying to check for? And then what does it look like after those first, 15 plays, to go with the baseball analogy, what does he look like, the second and the third time through the order, as a pitcher? What does he, what does he come with? What type of pitch sequencing does he use? And then what kind of adjustments do we see? What's the initial mode of attack? Are the Bills able to sustain that? If they're not, how do they pivot? Because we saw again last year, not to bring it up, but things happen in week one and sometimes adjustments are made and sometimes they're not. And the Bills just kept bashing their head against the brick wall that was the Steelers' rush and not running the ball and not executing in that regard. And that second half was just wildly different than the first half. And I'm very interested to see how Ken Dorsey pivots. Again, if you're tying it back to last week's episode from us here in the Skies coverage, my number one storyline for this season was Ken Dorsey as a first-year offensive coordinator and play caller. And it starts literally with game one against a good defense with a lot of studs and a lot of stars and arguably the best player in football, coached by a veteran, seasoned defensive coordinator, defensive-minded coach who in his first year with a new team and a new scheme, well, not a new team, but in his first year in a new scheme, won a Super Bowl. And now he's got another year in it and, lost some players. How does he adjust? It's just very exciting. Football's back. I said it when the preseason happened. I've said it each week since. I still feel like it's January and it's the divisional round and the season ended and I didn't know what to do with my life. And now even the Super Bowl. And then it was like, okay, there's the combine. Okay, there's free agency. Okay, there's the draft. Okay, it's camp.
The first week of college football really sets it in. Once
you
get that first weekend of college football, you're just like, oh, it's here. It's very real. The juices are flowing and I'm getting warmed up to football.
It's gotten a little chilly up here. Like it's almost like fall or fake fall. Like my wife says, like it's chilly, but it's like not fully fall yet. But it's like I'm wearing like a Scully and like a hoodie because it's like a little chilly.
That East Coast early fall. I miss that.
That little chill in the air in the morning and a little bit at night. Yeah, it's football season is back. Football weather is here right now. It may turn. Apparently, also, ironically, we're talking about that. I guess in LA, it's supposed to be like 100 degrees tomorrow. We're like super, 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 super warm. And we're over here on the East Coast and it's going to be chilly. No, it is not you. Man, I know I made a joke to lead this off. Shocker with you, Kendall. But massive, massive, massive props, massive, massive, massive kudos to you. Actually, real quick, awesome from Caleb. Yeah, Anthony Richardson balled out against Utah. That spin jump throw and just everything he did.
Real. Everyone talks about the talent with him and how he just kind of has to piecework it all together. And if he can, he's going to be legit. One step in the right direction.
Big time. Well, thank you, Patrick, for the show. Respect. Yeah, doubleheader tonight for me. But again, all jokes aside, I said that and then I pulled a comment, so I apologize for that for you, Kendall. But yes, I moved this show to a Tuesday for some life things happening tomorrow for me, and then I had a guest that things potentially, not even potentially, the things did not work out with the last minute. No negativity on them. Life happens sometimes. Huge shout out to you for not having the availability, figuring out a way to maneuver things to join me tonight. You were tremendous as always. Major shout out to you. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Very pleased with you as always. You continue to crush it. And thank you to everyone who joined us live on this episode of Disguise Coverage, especially considering, again, the time change, the day change. We had a ton of live viewers tonight. I hope that's a sign of things to come. I hope those of you who tuned in live tonight and watched this episode of Disguise Coverage will join me next week, Wednesday at 7 p.m., the normally scheduled time for Disguise Coverage, live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. I hope that strong viewership and numbers will continue into next week, because tonight was fantastic. Like just seeing everybody from a live viewership perspective. And then as always, again, the engagement, the thoughts, the super chats, the conversations with one another, the conversations directed towards us, the questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, all of those things. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us live on tonight's episode. If you are still here and we still got a pretty good head count right now, please drop a like on this video. I know it's corny, and I know I say that every week, and I know that it's corny to say that every week, but it goes a long way towards helping us to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears when you just drop a simple like on this YouTube video. If you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, thank you very much for your listen. Please rate and review Disguise Coverage. Please subscribe to Disguise Coverage on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, specifically, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Google, whatever have you. If you were on YouTube, subscribe to Disguise Coverage as well. And if you didn't join us live and you watched later, listen later, whatever have you, thank you so much for your listen, your view, your download, whatever have you, any and every single ounce of support that comes for myself, Kendall, this show, the entire team at Cover One. We're tremendously and greatly appreciative of. So thank you very much. And just in case those of you don't know, myself, Kendall, and Russell Brown from Cover One, live this Sunday at 7:15, we will be launching the Cover One Football Weekly Show, which will appear live every Sunday at 7:15, where we will be recapping the biggest storylines from that week in the NFL up to that point live, from a high-level structural, schematic, X's and O's perspective. Just three guys talking ball on about a variety of teams. We could be talking about the Bills, but we're going to be focusing about, if they focus into that, conversation. But yeah, everything. We're going to be focusing on the NFL at large across the entire league. Very, very excited to branch out and take this next step for the brand and be able to lead that charge. So please join us this upcoming Sunday live at 7:15 p.m. Eastern. You will see lots of communication on the socials and YouTube and podcasting apps about that. Take a drink of water, bathroom break, get some food, whatever everybody needs to do. Run it back live at 9 o'clock with myself and Eric Turner for an episode of the Cover One Film Room tonight. Big season. Very excited for what this could mean. You know what? Despite the fact that I had a really cool initial guest lineup and that person had to bail, I don't think I would have rather kicked off the season with anyone than you, Kendall. So I think it worked out.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm lying.
Likewise.
Just kidding. You're terrible.
No, right
just when I thought I'd bring it back in. But no, I think it was poetic that we kicked off the season officially after we did so much off-season work together. And thank you very much for being here. Thank you to everybody in the chat, post views, live views, likes, subscriptions, rates, reviews, all of those things. Thank you to all the kind words coming through in the chat right now. I'm not pulling them up right now because there's a ton. We'd be here for a while as I continue to thank everybody and pull up comments. Thank you so much. We hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well, staying safe. Take care of one another. Be kind to one another. We'll see you next week, live Wednesday at 7 p.m. for another episode of Disguise Coverage. And until then, enjoy Thursday. Get excited. Get ready. And as always, go Bills.